Today I'll show you, step by step, how to create this animation. No plugins, no templates, just After Effects. Let's make this animation together. First, let's create a new composition. Set the size to 1920 by 1080, name it Main, and make it 13 seconds long at 30 frames per second. Now, let's create a second composition and name it Part 1. Inside it, add a solid layer. This will be our background. Next, select the ellipse tool, hold down Shift, and draw a perfect circle. I'm using a 22 pixel stroke and no fill. Duplicate the layer with the ellipse, then click the eye icon to hide the top one. Press S to open the scale property, and at frame 0, set a keyframe. Then, at frame 10, increase the scale to 155%. Now, find the stroke width setting, set a keyframe at the start with a value of 66, and at frame 10, bring it down to 0. Finally, let's trim the layer to keep things clean. Let's rename this layer to Big Circle, so it's easier to work with. Then, select the top layer and move it so it starts at frame 5. Let's rename this one to Small for clarity. Press S and set the scale to 0. Now, disable the stroke and enable the fill, choosing a white color. At frame 5, set a keyframe for the scale. And then at frame 15, increase it to 36%. Don't forget to turn the layer visibility back on before animating. Now, grab the rectangle tool, hold down Shift, and draw a perfect square. Make it roughly the same size as our circle. Let's align the square to the center of the composition first. Then, find Rectangle Path and click Convert to Bezier Path. At frame 15, set a keyframe for the path. Next, select the small layer, find Ellipse Path, and also click Convert to Bezier Path. At frame 15, add a path keyframe there as well. Now you can hide the square layer, copy its path keyframe, and paste it at 1 second onto the path of the circle layer. This way, we get a smooth morphing animation from a circle to a square. Now you can delete the square layer, we won't need it anymore. With the small layer selected, press R to open the rotation property. At frame 15, set a keyframe. Then, move to 1 second and change the rotation value to 45 degrees. Now, let's preview the animation and see how it looks. At the 1 second mark, set the scale to 25%. Then duplicate the layer. Select both small layers and press P to open the position property. At frame 15, set a position keyframe for both. Now move to 1 second, select the top layer, and while holding Shift, use the arrow keys to move the shape slightly to the left, just enough to create some spacing. Then do the same for the second layer, select it, hold Shift, and move it to the right. Perfect. Now let's rename the top layer to Small Green. Go to Effects and Presets, search for Fill, and change its color to match the background. Press S, and at frame 15, set the scale to 20%. Next, duplicate the small green layer. On the duplicated one, delete the fill effect, that will make it white again. Finally, select the small layer, duplicate it, and move it to the very top of the layer stack. Select both the small green and small green 2 layers, and using Track Matte, link them to the small 2 layer. On the small green 2 layer, make sure to invert the matte. Now, select small and small green 2, and change their label color to yellow. That'll help us stay organized. Finally, let's trim the layers we're no longer working with, just to keep the timeline clean. Now, select all the keyframes from every layer and press F9 to easy ease them. Then, move the playhead to 1 second and 5 frames. Choose the pen tool, make sure no layers are selected, and draw a straight line with a 2-pixel stroke. Align the layer and rename it to Line. Then, move it above the big circle layer in the timeline. Make sure the line layer starts at frame 15. Press S to open the scale property, set a keyframe, and unlink the chain. Set the X scale to 0 at the start. Then 100% at 1 second. And back to 0 at 1 second and 10 frames. Now, go to Effects and Presets, search for Turbulent Displace, and apply it to the line layer. Go back to 1 second, set the amount to 0 and the size to 21. Then enable keyframes for amount. At 1 second and 10 frames, increase the amount to 100. Let's trim this layer to keep the timeline clean and focused on the active part of the animation. Let's create a null object and align it to the center of the composition. Move the layer so it starts at 1 second and 5 frames. Press R to open the rotation property, enable keyframes, then at 2 seconds and 5 frames, set the rotation value to 270 degrees. Now, select the 2 yellow layers and parent them to the null object. Select the ellipse tool, enable the stroke and disable the fill, then hold Shift to draw a small circle. Align it perfectly to the center of the composition. Trim the layer so it starts at 1 second and 9 frames. Find the stroke width property, set it to 25 pixels and add a keyframe at the beginning of the layer. Then, at 1 second and 23 frames, set the stroke width to 0. Press S to open the scale property and set a keyframe. Go back to 1 second and 9 frames, and set the scale value to 65%. Now, enable the fill and choose the same color as the background, it'll blend much better visually. Then, trim this layer to match the animation timing. Press U to reveal all keyframes and easy ease them. Also, easy ease the keyframes on the null object and trim that layer as well. Perfect. Now select both yellow layers and enable position keyframes. Then, go to 2 seconds and 15 frames, select the top yellow layer, and while holding Shift, use the up arrow key to move the shape to the center. Do the same with the bottom yellow layer, but move it down to the center, making sure both shapes align exactly where the first one was. Finally, select both layers and trim them to keep the timeline tidy. Select the pen tool, or press G, and draw a vertical line. Set the stroke width to 2 pixels and make sure the fill is disabled. Now, select the new layer, pre-compose it, and name it Lines. Then, open the Lines composition. Select the layer inside and add a Trim Paths effect. At the start of the timeline, set end equals 0 and enable a keyframe. Also, enable a keyframe for start. Move to frame 10, set start equals 100 and end equals 100. Then, drag the start keyframe so the first one begins at frame 5. Finally, let's make the line a bit longer, just like that. That's looking much better now. Let's duplicate the line layer, and with Shift held, move the new one to the right twice using the arrow key. Then, select the first line layer again, duplicate it, and move the new one to the left twice while holding Shift. Now, take the bottom line layer and shift it 2 frames forward on the timeline. This way, it starts a bit later. Also, move it slightly upward to add some variation. Next, let's define a region of interest around the lines. Make sure not to make it too small, so you don't cut off any part of the animation. Then go to Composition, crop to region of interest. Perfect. Let's trim all the line layers first to keep things clean. Now, open the composition settings for the lines comp and set the duration to 17 frames. Then, go back to the Part 01 composition, and at 2 seconds and 6 frames, add another instance of the lines pre-comp. Make sure both line compositions start at the exact same time on the timeline. Select the top layer, right-click on it, go to Transform Flip Vertical. Now, move the top layer slightly downward, just enough so the animation lines up visually the same way as you see on screen. Next, open the composition settings and set the duration to 2 seconds and 23 frames. And that's it. Here's what we've got. The first part of the animation is complete. Now let's move on to Part 2. Create a new composition and name it Part 2. Inside this comp, add a solid layer. This will be our background, and the color doesn't matter for now. Apply a fill effect and set the color to white. At the start of the timeline, enable a keyframe for color. Then, at frame 16, change the fill to a light gray tone. As you can see, this gives us a smooth animation from white to light gray. Okay, now let's add our text. Type outdoor advertisement. Using a 60-pixel font size. Align the text to the center of the composition and apply a fill effect to it. Next, type outdoor again as a separate text layer and align it exactly over the first one so the red text underneath isn't visible. Do the same with advertisement. Create a new layer and position it right over the original word, so it completely covers it. Yes, exactly like that. Now, you can delete the first text layer, we won't need it anymore. Select the 2 remaining text layers and move them 2 frames forward on the timeline. With both layers still selected, press P to open the position property and set a keyframe at the start of the layer, which is now at frame 2. Then, at frame 17, duplicate those keyframes to hold the position. Go back to the first keyframes, hold Shift, and press the down arrow key 3 times to move the text downward slightly. Perfect! Now press T to open opacity, enable a keyframe at the start, and set it to 0%. Then, at frame 17, increase the opacity to 100%. Select the rounded rectangle tool and draw a shape roughly the same size as the one shown on screen. turn off the stroke and enable the fill. Then, move the layer so it starts at 1 second on the timeline. Finally, change the layer color to make it easier to identify later while working. Press S to open the scale property and set a keyframe at 1 second with a value of 0%. Then, at 1 second and 13 frames, set the scale to 100%. Select both keyframes and press F9 to easy ease them. Open the graph editor, switch to the speed graph, and adjust it to match the shape shown on your screen. Now, move the rectangle layer so that it appears right between the two text layers, visually centered between outdoor and advertisement. Next, select both text layers and press U to reveal all keyframes. Go to frame 28 and duplicate the keyframes. Then, at 1 second and 13 frames, move advertisement slightly to the right and outdoor slightly to the left. This way, when the rectangle appears, the text smoothly splits apart to each side. Select all the keyframes and press F9 to easy ease them. Then, open the speed graph and adjust it to match the curve shown on your screen. At 1 second and 8 frames, set the opacity to 0% for both text layers. Now, trim those layers so they end right where the fade-out finishes. Next, at 1 second and 13 frames, enable a position keyframe for the rectangle layer. Go to 1 second and 28 frames, and move the rectangle to the left side of the screen. Finally, select the position keyframes, press F9 to easy ease them, open the speed graph, and adjust it to match your animation curve. Now let's add some extra elements. I got mine from freepik.com. Just type billboard isometric in the search bar. I'm using elements from 2 different files, and I've already selected and prepared the ones I need in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, now let's import the billboard into the composition. Okay, now let's add the billboard into the scene. Press S to open the scale property and increase its size a little so it fits better visually. Don't forget to enable the continuously rasterize. Next, move the billboard so it sits right on top of the green rectangle. Parent the billboard layer to the green rectangle so they move together. Finally, shift the billboard layer so it starts at 1 second and 13 frames on the timeline. Press S again and unlink the chain to adjust the scale separately. Then press Y to activate the pan behind tool and move the anchor point downward. In the scale property, set the Y-axis value to 0, and enable a keyframe. At 1 second and 28 frames, restore it to the original value, in your case, 338. At 2 seconds and 24 frames, copy and paste that same keyframe. Then, at 3 seconds and 9 frames, set the Y scale back to 0. Finally, trim the layer to keep the timeline clean. Select the scale keyframes and press F9 to easy ease them. Open the speed graph and match the curve you're using. Now duplicate the billboard layer. Set the top, duplicate, layer to start at 1 second and 18 frames. On the duplicate, select the last 2 scale keyframes and shift them so the final keyframe lands at 3 seconds and 5 frames. trim the duplicate layer to its animated range. Finally, set the size to 291. Since the chain is unlinked, enter 291 on both X and Y manually to avoid distortion. Set the same value, 291, on the previous keyframe as well. Both X and Y should be 291. Now, move the second billboard slightly to the left of the first one. Just like that. Next, let's add the text billboards. Set the font size to 100 pixels, use the Poppins extra bold typeface, and apply the same color as the green rectangle so everything stays consistent. Let's align the text layer so it's vertically centered and positioned slightly to the right of the green rectangle. Make sure the text layer starts at 1 second and 8 frames. Open the text layer settings and click Animate Position. Then, inside Animator 1, go to Add Property Opacity, and again add Property Tracking. Set the following values: Position, 150. Opacity, 0%. Tracking amount, -60. Now, open the Range Selector settings, enable a keyframe for start at the beginning of the layer, and at 2 seconds and 8 frames, set Start equals 100. Select the Start keyframes and press F9 to easy ease them. Then, open the speed graph and adjust the curve to match your reference. Now, using the first animator, go to Add Property Tracking again, and enable keyframes for tracking amount. At 1 second and 24 frames, set the first keyframe. Then, at 2 seconds and 24 frames, change the tracking amount to 20. Select both keyframes, press F9 to easy ease them, open the speed graph, and adjust it to match the curve you're following. Press U to reveal all keyframes. Go to 2 seconds and 34 frames, copy the start keyframes, and paste them right there. Then, right-click on the pasted keyframes Keyframe Assistant Time Reverse Keyframes. This will swap their order. Next, at 3 seconds and 24 frames, set the tracking amount to 0. Select that keyframe, press F9 to easy ease, open the speed graph, and adjust it to match your reference curve. Perfect, looking great so far. Let's trim this text layer to keep the workspace clean and easier to manage. Now, select the last 2 keyframes and move them so the final keyframe lands at 3 seconds and 15 frames. Next, create a new composition with a duration of 2 seconds and 7 frames. Copy the billboards text layer and paste it inside this new comp, making sure it starts right at frame 0. Press T and set the opacity to 10%. Increase the text size to 500 pixels, and center it perfectly on the screen. Select the text layer and duplicate it twice. Place one copy above the main text and the other below, so you have 3 lines in total. Now, select the bottom 2 text layers and move them slightly to the left. Just like that, perfect. Next, go back to the Part 2 composition. Find the billboards composition and drag it onto the timeline, placing it right after the advertisement layer and just before shape layer 1, that's our green rectangle. Move the billboard's composition layer so it starts at 1 second and 8 frames. Press T to open opacity and set it to 60%, so the text is just slightly visible in the background. Perfect, now let's add the next element, city light. Drag it onto the timeline, press S to open scale, and set it to 447. Move the city light element so it sits right on top of the green rectangle layer. Press Y to activate the pan behind tool and move the anchor point down to the bottom of the element. Now, duplicate the layer, and on the top copy, set the scale to 308. Shift this top layer slightly to the right for better composition balance. Select both city light layers, and parent them to shape layer 1, the green rectangle. At 2 seconds and 27 frames, trim both layers from the left so they start at that point. Then, enable a scale keyframe, unlink the chain, and set the Y scale to 0. Go to 3 seconds and 12 frames, and set the Y scale value of each layer to match their X scale. This brings both layers to full size. Then move to 4 seconds and 18 frames, copy and paste the last keyframes to hold that position. After that, go to 5 seconds and 3 frames and set the Y scale back to 0 on both layers. Now, shift the top layer forward by 2 frames so it starts at 2 seconds and 29 frames, and leave the bottom layer in its current position. Select the keyframes of the first city light layer, press F9 to easy ease them, then open the speed graph and adjust it to match your reference curve. Now, trim this layer to end right after the animation finishes. Select the second city light layer, easy ease its scale keyframes as well, open the speed graph, match your curve again, and trim this layer too. Now, select the billboard's text layer and duplicate it. Also, duplicate the billboard's composition, which is currently named BG boards. And rename the new copy to City Light. Move the duplicated text layer so it starts at 3 seconds and 2 frames, and change the text to City Light. Scroll down the timeline and duplicate the BG boards, or billboards, replace that duplicated layer with your new City Light composition. Move the City Light composition layer so it starts at 3 seconds and 2 frames on the timeline. Then, open the City Light composition, and inside it, change the text on all layers from billboards to City Light. Perfect. Now, go back to the Part 2 composition. Add the next element to the timeline, making it start at 4 seconds and 28 frames. Set the scale to 200, and make sure to enable the Continuously Rasterize switch, the little gear/sun icon, for sharp vector quality. Then, move the bus stop element so it sits right on top of the green rectangle. Press Y to activate the Pan Behind tool, and drag the anchor point down to the bottom of the object. Unlink the scale chain, set the Y scale to 0, and enable a keyframe. Then, at 5 seconds and 13 frames, set the Y scale to 200. At 6 seconds and 23 frames, duplicate the previous keyframe to hold that value. At 7 seconds and 8 frames, duplicate the very first keyframe, Y scale equals 0. Now trim the layers, select all the scale keyframes, press F9 to easy ease, open the speed graph, and adjust it to match your reference curve. Don't forget to parent the bus stop layer to shape layer 1, the green rectangle. Next, duplicate the City Light text layer and move it to the very top of the layer stack. Make sure it starts at the same time as the bus stop element layer. Rename this duplicated text layer to Bus Shelters. Also, make sure the text doesn't overlap the green rectangle, adjust its position slightly if needed. Now, duplicate the billboards, or BG boards, composition as well as the City Light composition, and rename the new copy to Bus Shelters so it's easy to distinguish from the others. Hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows, then drag the new Bus Shelters composition over the BG boards, third layer. This will replace it in the timeline. Rename this new layer to Bus Shelters, and place it below the City Light layer in the stack. Now, move the Bus Shelters comp layer so it starts exactly at the same time as your Bus Shelters text layer. Finally, open the Bus Shelters composition, and inside it, change all the text layers to say Bus Shelters. Go back to the main composition. Let's create the transition between Part 1 and Part 2. Make sure Part 2 starts at 2 seconds and 13 frames. Select the Part 2 layer, then grab the Ellipse tool, hold Shift, and draw a perfect circle. This will automatically create a mask on the layer. Align the mask to the center of the composition. Open the Mask 1 properties, find Mask Expansion, and decrease its value until the circle is completely invisible. Then, go to 3 seconds, and increase the mask expansion value enough so that Part 2 fully appears on screen, revealing the second part of the animation. Select the mask expansion keyframes, press F9 to easy ease them, then open the speed graph and adjust it to match your reference curve. Now let's move on and create part 3 of the animation. Open the new composition and inside it, add a solid layer with a green color. This will be our background. Next, select the text tool and type Media. You can pause and check the exact text settings I'm using if needed. Don't forget to align the text perfectly to the center. Then, create another text layer and name it Lumo. I'm using the Poppins font at 200 pixels, with letter spacing set to 0. Let's change the color to white, align it horizontally to the center, and move the text a bit closer to Media. Now, let's add our logo, scale it up to make it larger, and apply a fill effect with the same green color as the Media text. Don't forget to enable the Continuously Rasterize switch for better quality. Finally, align the logo horizontally to the center and place it right above the text. And adjust everything slightly so it looks balanced and harmonious. Now, select the Lumo text layer and go to Create Shapes from Text. Then, duplicate this new shape layer 3 more times. You'll have 4 shape layers in total. Rename each one according to its corresponding letter. If you don't see that panel, go to the window menu and enable Properties. Apply a fill effect to the first Lumo text layer, and make sure all the letters are in the right place and correctly separated into their own layers. Now, change the color of the logo and the Media text to green, and hide all unnecessary layers, leaving only the Lumo shape layers and the main text visible. Next, zoom in on the composition and activate the rulers to use guides along the sides of the letters. We'll start with the letter L. Select all the letter layers and center their anchor points so each one rotates and scales from the middle. Select the L layer and find its path property. Set a keyframe at frame 20, then go back to frame 10. Using the pen tool, move the bottom part of the L slightly to the left. Zoom in to make sure it aligns perfectly as a single clean line. Next, press Y to activate the Pan Behind tool and drag the anchor point downward to the base of the shape. Press S to open scale, unlink the chain, and at frame 0, set the Y scale to 0% and enable a keyframe. Then, at frame 10, set the Y scale to 100%. Press U to reveal all keyframes, select them all, and press F9 to easy ease. Finally, open the speed graph and adjust it to match your reference curve. Yes, perfect, that looks great. Now let's move on to the letter U. Make sure no other layer is selected in the timeline, otherwise, you'll end up creating a mask instead of a new shape. With nothing selected, draw a line above the letter U using the pen tool. When placing the first point, click and drag slightly sideways. This will create Bezier handles, the little whiskers, that let you control the curve of the line. Increase the stroke width a bit so the line fully covers the letter U. Then, rename the layer to Mask U and move it above the U layer in the timeline. Parent the U layer to the Mask U layer using Track Matte. Then, select the Mask U layer and add a Trim Paths effect to it. Open the Trim Path settings and set End equals 0. Enable a keyframe for End at frame 10, then at frame 20, set End equals 100. Select both keyframes, press F9 to easy ease, then open the speed graph and adjust it to match your reference. Now, move the last keyframe to 1 second, and place the first keyframe at the very start, frame 0, with End equals 0. Make a few final tweaks to the curve for smoother motion. Perfect. Now let's move on to the letter M. First, we need to place guides along the left and right edges of the M shape. At frame 20, with the M layer selected, find its path property and enable a keyframe. Also set another keyframe at 1 second. Then, go back to frame 20, select the pen tool, and place new points along the guides you set earlier. Perfect. Press Y and move the anchor point to the bottom of the shape. Then press S, unlink the scale chain, and set the Y scale to 0% at the very start of the layer. At frame 10, set the Y scale to 100%. Select both scale keyframes, press F9 to easy ease, and open the speed graph to adjust it so it matches your curve reference. Press U to reveal all keyframes, select the path keyframes, and shift them slightly forward. Apply easy ease to them as well, and fine-tune the speed graph to match your motion style. Finally, move the last path keyframe to frame 25 to make the animation smoother. Perfect, now we just have the last shape, the letter O, left to animate. Select the O shape layer and find its path property. Note that there are two paths, and we need the bottom one. At frame 20, enable a keyframe for that path. Then, go to frame 10, select the pen tool, and select the inner points of the shape. While holding Alt, Windows, or Option, Mac, click on those points to convert them to corner points. Select them again and move them slightly to the left. Now do the same on the right side, hold Alt/Option and drag the handles inward toward the center. Finally, align all the points perfectly in the center, just like shown on screen. Perfect. Go back to the start of the timeline, enable a scale keyframe, and set its value to 0. At frame 20, set the scale to 100%. Press U to reveal all keyframes, select them all, and press F9 to easy ease. Open the speed graph and first adjust the scale keyframes curve. Then do the same for the path keyframes to match your motion style. Now, preview the animation. Looks great. Next, parent the U layer to the Mask U layer. Select all the light blue layers except U, press P to open position, enable a keyframe at frame 20, and at frame 0, hold Shift and press the down arrow 3 times to move the shapes downward. At frame 10, move all the shapes upward a bit. Select all the position keyframes, press F9 to easy ease, open the speed graph, and adjust the curves to match your animation reference. Perfect. Now, stagger the layers by moving each one 2 frames forward so each letter appears slightly later than the previous one. Remember that the U has 2 layers, U and mask U, so move them together by 2 frames. Then move the M layer another 2 frames after U, and continue in that sequence for the remaining letters. Alright, that looks great, really nice flow. Now, select the M layer, press S, and at frame 4, set the scale on the X-axis to 50. Or even 40, that looks better. Let's remove the guides, we don't need them anymore. Select all layers, press U to show all keyframes, then copy and paste them at 1 second and 29 frames. Right-click Keyframe Assistant Time Reverse Keyframes to reverse the animation. Then adjust a few keyframes slightly so everything feels smooth and balanced. Perfect, that looks much better. Now, trim all layers to end at the last keyframe. You can delete the Lumo text layer, we don't need it anymore. Make the media layer visible again. And move it so it starts at 1 second. Press T, set opacity to 0, and enable a keyframe. At 1 second and 10 frames, set opacity to 100. Press S, enable a keyframe at 110, and at the start of the layer, set scale to 80. Reveal all the keyframes, select them, and press F9 to easy ease. Then open the speed graph and tweak the curve slightly for a smoother motion. Select all keyframes again, copy and paste them at 2 seconds, right-click Keyframe Assistant Time Reverse Keyframes to reverse that animation. Now let's move on to the logo. Make it visible, grab the pen tool, and draw a line that follows the shape of the logo. Make sure no layer is selected so you don't accidentally create a mask. Increase the stroke width a bit so it covers the logo completely, but make sure the start of the line doesn't overlap the main logo, we want a clean reveal. Parent the logo layer to the new line layer, and move both layers 10 frames forward on the timeline. Then, parent the logo to the top layer as well. Open the top layer's parameters, add trim paths, and at the start of the layer, set end equals 0. Make sure everything looks neat, adjust if needed. Then at 1 second, set end equals 100. Select the end keyframes, press F9 to easy ease. At frame 25, add a position keyframe, and another one at the start. At frame 17, move the shape slightly upward for a subtle motion. Select those position keyframes, easy ease them, and adjust the speed graph. At the start, enable rotation, and at frame 25, add another keyframe. Set the first rotation to -52 degrees. Select both Easy Ease and shape the speed graph again. Press U, select all keyframes, copy them, and paste at 2 seconds. Right-click the end keyframes keyframe assistant time reverse keyframes. Change the rotation back to 0, and at 2 seconds and 15 frames, set it again to -52 degrees. Now, trim the extra layers, and set the composition duration to 4 seconds. Shift the keyframes to 1 second and 13 frames. Go back to the main composition and add part 3 to the timeline at 9 seconds and 19 frames. We'll create the same transition as before between parts 2 and 3. Select part 3, grab the ellipse tool, hold shift, and draw a perfect circle in the center. Align it so it's perfectly centered. Open the mask properties, lower mask expansion until the circle disappears, and enable a keyframe at the start of the layer. Then, at 10 seconds and 2 frames, increase mask expansion, so the third part of the animation fully appears. Nice, that works perfectly. Now let's add the music track and take a look at the full result. We'll make a few final adjustments, set the main composition length to 14 seconds, and in part 3, extend all layers to last until 3 seconds, moving some keyframes slightly for better timing. Let the media text end around 2 seconds and 20 frames. If you notice anything off or slightly misaligned, fix it now. We'll make one last tweak, set the part 3 duration to 5 seconds, and extend the main composition by another 15 frames. Stay creative, keep animating, and I'll see you in the next one.